Welcome to the Learner Centered Collaborative podcast. I'm your host, Katie Martin, and today joined by George Philhower. George's LinkedIn bio is one of my favorites, so I want to read it. Taylor's husband and proud father of Riley and Elijah. As an enthusiastic and dedicated superintendent at CSC Eastern Hancock County, he's committed to ensuring that each student wakes up excited to go to school, knowing they will feel safe and free to be themselves, get to do meaningful work, have fun and learn with our friends, feel successful as they learn new things, be surrounded by adults who love them. I love all of these, and it's what I want for my kids. I can't wait to dig in today. Welcome, George.
Thank you so much, Katie. Appreciate being invited.
What just cool, authentic way to put it out there. And I think something that we all want for kids, but don't always know how to create those opportunities in our school system. So thanks for leading the way, and thanks for really modeling what a lot of us really believe.
Thank you so much. I think, it's something I think about a lot is how do we create an environment that kids would be excited to wake up and go be a part of every single day.
Awesome. Well, let's start from the beginning. Share some of the key experiences that have shaped you as the leader and superintendent that you are today.
Yeah. So I grew up in Indiana, just not that far from where I work right now. Um, and as a young elementary kid, kind of struggled. Learning was hard for me. I was one of those kids that probably got missed by some of the things we know now about dyslexia and those kind of things. I ended up with an IEP, but just kind of struggled, with learning. And um, I'm not a fan of retention, but in sixth grade, I got to do it twice. And because I was old enough and I had two good teachers, and I kind of got to see behind the curtain of what school looks like a little bit. And started to figure out that there's a game to be played. And then throughout my middle school and high school, I found a way to be lots of ways to be successful. Lots of ways to think about how I learn best and navigate that. And it's kind of something that, you don't realize it when you're doing it. But as I reflect now as a grown up, I think it's driven a lot of what I do and why I do it. I was the kid that went to college and everybody tells you here's the textbooks you need. 2 months in, these things are expensive. I'm buying them on my own. And so I didn't buy a textbook after that first semester unless I needed it. And it turned out I didn't. So I've always been that kid because of the way that I grew up, that I could question the system and figure out how to navigate it on my own terms. And then, I went straight into education because I wanted to make a difference for kids that grew up like I did, where school was hard and the social part was good sometimes, but because school was hard, sometimes when I was younger, the social part wasn't as
Mhm.
easy. Athletics helped me when I was in middle school and high school to kind of find my group, and um, I was fortunate enough to play basketball in high school and be on the basketball team in college, which helped me find a great social network through that time of my life. And I was a special education teacher because of, mostly because of my background growing up as a student, and then kind of fell into various administrative roles and almost by accident found myself as superintendent. I've been at Eastern Hancock this is year number 4 for me, which is crazy. Time goes so fast, and I feel like I've got the best job in the world.
So many things that I'm just like, yes, that makes so much sense. Learning about, like you said, dyslexia a lot. We don't know a lot about that for many years. I've learned a lot about it through my own son and how he sees school and how he's seen in school. But some of our, people with dyslexia are the most creative and thoughtful. And if you can harness those strengths, really get to see the best out of people. And so I'm glad that through those opportunities, you've been able to leverage your strengths. And when I hear you talk, I think about, thank goodness you are coming into education, because not because you loved it and it worked perfectly for you, but because you saw there was a different way to do things and are now creating those opportunities for so many other kids.
Yeah, I think there's lots of ways to do lots of things, and I think we all have our own strengths, interests, and values that we bring to them, and if we can figure out how to create a space where those things can show up and look like strengths instead of barriers, then that feels like the secret sauce to what we might be looking for.
100%. I love the Don Clifton quote that imagine what's possible when we focus on what's right with people instead of what's wrong with people.
Yeah, that's so good. So good.
Yeah, yeah, and you see in your classrooms, in your schools, in your systems, like the different talents that people can bring if we let them show, and it's really powerful. So you have some promises. Well, first, let's before we go into the promises, tell us a little bit about Eastern Hancock. You've been there for 4 years. What's the context in which you lead?
So Eastern Hancock is a small rural district just outside of Indianapolis. So if you've ever been to Indianapolis and you've taken Interstate 70 runs east west, cuts the city in half, and if you take in Interstate 70 out of Indianapolis towards Ohio, you can literally see our school from Interstate 70. We're 1,200 students. While you can see us from Interstate 70, we joke that we're rural enough that you can't really get to us from Interstate 70. Um, but it's a wonderful community. We're kindergarten through grade 12, all on one campus. We were, when the building was first built, it was built all on one property, a middle school, high school building, and an elementary building. And then the community grew a little bit, which created a need for a middle school. And they built that right in the middle of the elementary and the middle school, high school. So we have all K through 12 connected under one roof. So, and my office sits right out in front of that space. So I can take a walk and I can go see students in grade 12 all the way to grade K in 10 minutes. It is a wonderful, wonderful place.
That's really cool. I was just thinking because I was on my own high school campus yesterday. My son was playing volleyball, and we had about 4,000 kids just at the high school. So a very different dynamic, but what a cool opportunity to have K-12 under one building and to have that community there.
Yeah, I love the small community. I joke that if Katie, you give me a good idea, we can try it tomorrow. I don't need to have meetings to make decisions,
I
and
love that.
I think that gives us the ability to be adaptable to what kids need. It also gives me some really cool opportunities, and I meet with every single junior and senior one at a time, and I'm able to ask them, "What's your plan after leave this place?" And that gives me a couple of things. It lets me know, first of all, am I putting the right things in place for each individual one of them so that they feel like they might be successful when they leave, but also I do it in the fall, so it gives me opportunities as I'm connecting with community partners. I'm thinking about our kids and I'm thinking about our kids as individuals and which ones I might need to connect with which community partners to make sure that they're confident about their success the Monday after graduation.
Whoa, I want to like dig into this. You meet with every single junior and senior in your district. What does that look like? Like, do you schedule it? You go to them? Tell me more.
Yeah, so our high school principal, and his secretary set it up, and they come in, and sometimes it's a 5 minute meeting. The kid, it's a senior, and they've already got a scholarship to go somewhere or they've got a job and they're just planning to stay with that job, and it's just a time for them to check in with us. And sometimes it's a bit longer and we're trying to dive into um, what that kid's plan is, and our goal is to get better at those meetings every year. That my first year, I think they kind of thought I was crazy that we wanted to do this. um, Kids didn't really know. I think that
Mhm.
it's true that not every 17-year-old knows what they want to do for the rest of their life. But in my world, in the K-12 space, we've used that as a crutch to kind of do a cruddy job helping kids think about that. And I think
Right.
it's true that kids are probably going to change their mind, but kids can't start that mind changing process until we've started the conversation with them. And when we know what our kids are interested in, then we know what kinds of things we should build into the school to make them excited to be there.
I love that. And the opportunity, I mean, of course, the first time they're probably like, wait, my superintendent wants to meet with me. Am I in trouble? Like, what's going to happen? But what an opportunity to understand your kids, understand and kind of just see what their goals are. but especially helping them. You know, my kids are in ninth and 10th grade. They have no idea what they want to do. But that's not going to change by just going through the motions without having conversations and being exposed, finding out how to connect people to help them think about those things.
Yeah, we think that discovering what you want to do is a lot of times a process of elimination, and you can't start eliminating things until you get some experience with the things that you think you might be interested in. So we try to build that in as much as possible, and we schedule a few weeks out of the year, in pockets of time so that we can just have one kid after another come in and just spend a little bit of time. And I keep this huge spreadsheet with all of our kids, so then I know that 20 to 25% of our kids are interested in healthcare, and 10% are interested in manufacturing or construction. And then when I'm talking to our community partners, we can start to figure out, well, what would be the ideal program for a kid who's interested in healthcare, to decide how do we narrow it down even further so that they're confident and excited about what their next steps might be after they leave us.
Yeah. So give us an example of what some of those programs look like based on the conversations and when you're talking to community partners. What are some of the opportunities that your kids have to explore careers and next
Sure. So
steps?
the other end of those conversations are what we call our strategy cafe. So it stands for community and family engagement. So we have quarterly meetings where we invite our community partners either into our school building, or because we're remote, we go to the neighboring town and host the meetings at a community center there. And we'll have 100 community members show up to talk about you know what kinds of attributes do they want our kids to graduate with, and then it's our opportunity to kind of be held accountable to them. But then that's also a relationship building time that I've learned that first meeting's easy to get people to come to because they're excited and interested. That what's the school district want, why are they inviting us here? But
Yeah.
the second meeting is the big one, because then you have to say, hey, I listened to you, and here's what we're doing because of that. And then that gives us an opportunity between those big meetings. We can have industry specific meetings. So that's led to some meetings with a company called Edwards, that has a construction company that they now team teach a class with a teacher on our campus for kids their sophomore year, where they're doing a unit on safety, they're doing a unit on hand tools, a unit on power tools, a unit on HVAC, a unit on pipe fitting, plumbing, and then one more that I'm not thinking of. And then the senior, they literally go into the same apprenticeship program that they usually designate for the 22-year-olds. So that's an opportunity starting the kids sophomore year, and a little more specific, their junior and senior year, where they're really trying to decide, is that something that we're interested in doing. We host a similar program, or we're going to next fall, for healthcare, where our kids will be able to. We would like them to be eligible to sit for their CNA test going into their junior year of high school, so then they can get some real world experience in that world as well, to see if healthcare and bedside manner and all of those kinds of things are something that they might be interested in taking a look at for the rest of their life.
So, like you said, some kids are weeding it, saying, "Oh, I'm experiencing this, and I don't want to do it." But sometimes that's better than figuring out exactly what you do want to do. Is by process of elimination, having those opportunities early on, decide what feels like a good fit.
That's right. And not just that, they're connecting with people that are actually doing the job. Katie, I don't know about you, but I've been in school every day since I was 5. I started in kindergarten, and I've literally been on a school schedule my entire life. I've never experienced anything outside of school. So that means I've had lots of years of school, and I know a lot about school, but I don't know anything about anything else. So when I'm meeting with kids to talk about what do they want to do after high school, I'm just the note taker and the connector.
I
Like, my
love that.
job is to connect them with the experts who are doing the thing in the field, so that they can see those people. And I want them to think about two things. Like, one, is this the type of job that I think I could do? And also, is this the kind of person that I think I could be and work with? And
Hmm.
putting those two, if we talk about it like it's two puzzle pieces that we're trying to figure out how to put together. We've got lots of community partners who are looking for quality talent coming out of high school and college, and whatever that mix looks like. But also, we've got kids every year that are graduating And if they're just graduating and graduation is it, then that's not quite good enough. And if we can figure out how to put those two puzzle pieces together, then our community is going to benefit, our families are going to benefit, and in general, society.
Yeah. What I hear you talking about is like, it's not just getting through school as an educator, as a professional educator. Really, like I said, you know school, but there's so much out there in the world and so many different avenues that our young people can take. And if we only expose them to this is the way we do school and expect them to translate that, it's a harder jump for kids to figure that out. And you're getting them that exposure and connections to people beyond educators who can help mentor and guide and shape them into their next steps.
Yeah, I think that even trickles into the traditional classroom as well. Our kids each they carry around a cell phone in their pocket where they've got access to YouTube and Netflix, and they don't even have to tolerate irrelevant TV show or whatever they're watching. So if we think they're going to tolerate something that's irrelevant in the classroom, I think we need to rethink that. And if most teachers are like me and they don't really know uh, when I was at school, if I would have asked my teacher, why do I need to know this? I got in trouble when I went home
Hmm.
because it felt like disrespect. And I think our kids are asking that question. And in today's world, it's not from a place of disrespect. It's because they have relevance at their fingertips all the time. And we owe it to our kids to be able to tell them. And sometimes I think our teachers don't know. And so it takes the work, the collaboration with those community partners so they can tell our kids, here's how algebra 2 applies in the real world. Here's how I use this every single day.
Yeah, I mean, a few things you just hit on, and it's not because teachers are wanting to do something bad, but they're like, this is how I've experienced education, and this is what I know, and so this is how I think that I can help you be successful. I don't know one educator who doesn't want their kids to be successful and doesn't want to do the best for them. But to your point, so many times when kids are coming in and they now have access to all this information, teachers might feel threatened. And in some places and school districts, we're banning cell phones. We're banning social media because we're afraid that it's diverting attention from kids. And in a lot of ways it is. I have, like I said, two high schoolers. I see that. But how are you, thinking about technology in your schools with this polarizing way of seeing like no technology or leveraging it to learn?
Yeah. So in Indiana, we're one of those states where cell phones aren't allowed in the classroom.
Okay.
And, you know, we have noticed that it does make a difference. But at the same time, thinking about student engagement and their interest in the stuff we're learning, even beyond what they have access to when they're not in our classroom, it requires if we truly want kids to learn the things that we're so we talked about this, just mentioned it, but we have four promises in our district. And one
Mhm.
of those promises is growth. And so we talk about the idea that we want our kids to learn new things that they will remember every day. And so that sounds really easy. Like if you're not an educator, but we also know that 60% of the time that kids are sitting in school, they're learning things that they already know about.
Mhm.
So that means that we've got a bunch of kids who are showing up to school with the not thinking they're going to be doing the job of learning something new, but they're showing up to school to show what they already know.
Right.
So how do we switch that a little bit, and how do we make our kids curious enough that they want to learn more about the things that we need them to know while they're in school? And the other piece of that is that we want them to learn things that they will remember. And I think we can all remember taking the test on Friday at 2 o'clock, and by 2:30 we don't remember
Yeah.
anything. I could not retake that assessment. And I think those when that is the level of learning that we're looking for, it requires um, a different mindset than what might have been allowable 10 or 15 years ago.
Right. The first is show up, compliant, sit in the seat, take it all in, show me what you know. In some cases, like you said, what you already knew, or what you didn't actually pick up. Um, but yeah, that I see in my kids, and I see in so many kids when they're curious and they want to learn something, they'll figure it out. And I half the time they ask me things that they're learning about in school. I'm like, I have no idea. I have to look it up. I don't remember that at all. Um, And if I need to figure it out, I can, but there's certainly a lot that I am not, did not retain from my high school years. So you talked about one of your promises. What are the other three? Because there's four promises that guide the work that you all do.
Yeah, that's right. So we've got a strategic plan at Eastern Hancock that guides everything we do. And so we've got four promises that they serve as both um, our compass as we're trying to figure out which direction are we going, but they also serve as our filter as we're trying to make decisions about what are we going to say yes to and what are we going to say no to. So promise number one is we call it joy, and it's just the idea of being really intentional about what are we doing to make people excited to come back to school tomorrow. So in a lot of times that looks like just whimsy and silly and fun. I've got a office full of crazy people who have all of these blow up costumes. So if you look on Facebook at Eastern Hancock's Facebook page, you can see pictures of them going around and handing out birthday cookies and all kinds of things. If we're not too careful, one will sneak in the background and make an appearance every so often while I'm on a Zoom meeting, regardless of how important it might be. But just fun. But we also know it kind of goes back to that growth thing that we know that emotion cements learning, that how kids are feeling while they're learning has a really big impact on whether or not they're going to remember that thing that they're learning. So while sometimes it's whimsy and it's just for the sake of fun, other times it's really intentional. So an example of that happens in fifth grade when they're learning about Paul Revere. We're a rural school, so we've got students who have farm animals, and we had a student that dressed up like Paul Revere. And while kids are learning about Paul Revere in their textbook, she rode past the classroom screaming the British were coming, dressed up like Paul Revere. So those fifth graders are going to remember that for the rest of their life.
Sure.
And so we try to figure out how do we give kids that emotional experience that they'll remember for the rest of their life. We also think that joy is an invitation. That really joy, there are layers of joy. That yes, joy happens when you're smiling, but also there's more meaningful pieces of joy that are deeper, and we feel like people find those in those other three promises. So if joy is our promise that serves as our invitation, then what they're going to find once they take those steps closer are promise number two, which is connection, which just means that we want each person that works or goes to Eastern Hancock to feel known by name, strength, interest, needs, and future hopes and dreams. And we feel like if we can create a place where every employee and student feels that way, that it's a pretty spectacular place. And we do lots of intentional things. Me meeting with every junior and
For
senior is just
sure.
one of those things
Yeah,
that we do to try to make sure that kids feel that way. Um, Promise number three is growth. We talked quite a bit about that one. That's kind of obvious, right? We want all of our kids. We're a school. Kids
hmm
should be learning. And promise number four is success. That's just a reminder that academic proficiency is not the goal. That we want happy, healthy kids that graduate and feel successful. When they leave on that Monday after graduation. And those are our four promises. We're super excited about them all. It's awesome to be in a spot where if you ask any of our employees and some of our kids, they could tell you what our four promises are, and that's pretty fun.
that is pretty fun. And I like how you highlighted that it's not just for students, right? Joy for educators, principals, school leaders, like that also breeds the joy for young people in the system, and I'm sure families and the larger community, that's for everybody. When you want to show up and you want to be with people and you're happy, things aren't always easy, but when you are surrounded by people who want to create a joyous environment, it makes those other things, like you said, a lot easier to tackle.
Yeah, we feel like if you just watch the news or just pay attention to the world around you, the gravity of the work we're doing isn't pulling us towards a place of joy by itself. So if we're going to get there, it's got to be intentional. And we really do believe that starts with the grown-ups. So we do a couple things with that. So one is I learned in my first year that convincing teachers to integrate fun stuff into their classroom is not hard. That's an easy sell. Like, hey, let's do something fun. But we're asking people who have really full plates to do one more thing. So we have um, I'm not very good at using a secretary. So my secretary's actual role is joy integration specialist.
I
So
love that.
her number one job is to help our teachers when they want to pull off something crazy in their classroom, no matter what else she has to do. Like that is her number one job. So she's the one that coordinates the horse, helps with that. If a teacher has this dream idea, in kindergarten they want to do Polar Express, and it's one that gets bigger and bigger every year. So every year before we leave for winter break, our bus pulls up that's direct that one of our school buses that's decked out like the Polar Express. We've got someone dressed up like the conductor. The kids get on, get their ticket punched. We drive around the parking lot. They stop at the bus garage that's been transformed into the Polar Express with a real live reindeer. Santa's in there, and they do all kinds of learning activities in that space. And she's the one that helps make that magic happen. The other thing that we do that this will be our third year is we put on a conference every July. We call it Joy Jam, and it's a free conference. If you just Google Joy Jam, it'll pop up. It'll look like it costs $7,777, but it's really free. We make you enter a code. We think Joy should be free, but we have wonderful speakers there. It's a great experience. But when you sign up for Joy Jam, you also tell us what your favorite candy is, what your favorite snack is, and we make sure that we have those things at the conference for you. And we have a candy and snack room that those things are available for free throughout the whole conference. We're in the middle of nowhere, so you can't go across the street to Starbucks. So we set up a Starbucks where you can go just get a free barista style coffee every day. Um, we had a puppy room because puppies bring joy, and so people could go play with puppies during the conference or during breaks. This year we've got some really exciting things happening. Last year we had a petting zoo, so you just never know what's going to happen at Joy Jam. We can host up to 400 people, and I think we haven't announced who our speakers yet, and it's also still February, but we only have 150 of those 400 spots left.
Wow.
So we're really excited about Joy Jam.
I love that. The back to your secretary being a joy integration specialist. She must love her job, right? And get to make other people's jobs more fun and filled with joy. It is intentional, like you said, it takes work, and it's like someone who hosts a great party. You just feel it and can enjoy it. It reminds me of Priya Parker, just the joy of gathering. And I'm always so grateful for people who can put on those parties and really think about how to make everyone feel included and special and have fun. And what a cool purpose or promise to your community.
Yeah, she's a spectacular person as well. She loves giving. Something that we're learning is that joy's fun, like the silly things that are fun, but really what causes the most joy is giving the joy. And so enabling our staff to be able to do that it's really powerful, and
Yeah.
it's been a really positive thing.
And the other thing that you said that really stands out to me is success is not just, academic achievement. It goes beyond that to leading purposeful lives, which means finding a career and work that you can do to contribute, but also feel valued. And we don't always focus on that in education. It seems like you said, of course, growth, that's what we do in education. We want to grow our kids. But when we think about to what end, it shifts how we design those opportunities and experiences in what we do. And if it's just for the GPA, if it's just to get into this one college, but not about what you do after that or how you lead your life, I think we end up missing the point. And so it means so much that you're highlighting that as a promise and elevating that in your community.
Yeah, I think that perspective is really easy to forget. We get caught up in the test scores and all of those silly things that we have to think about from time to time. And sometimes we get put in like from a district leader perspective, we get put in a position where we're having to make decisions between what might be best for the individual kids and what might be best for the district as a whole.
Mhm.
And looking through the lens of the work we do through those four promises helps me keep that perspective.
I love that. So when you think about, as you said, superintendent, you have to manage the whole, and sometimes individuals and the whole have competing interests, and we always want to know like how are we doing. So, how do you think about measuring success based on these four promises?
Yeah, so a couple of them are hard to measure. Just to be, as you know, growth, we have all the standardized and non-standardized ways that we can measure growth. Um, that's one we're thinking a lot about is how do you truly measure academic growth without all the other stuff getting in the way?
Yeah.
Katie, I know that's something you think about a lot is how do we measure the non-academic things separately from the academic things, and that's definitely a journey we're on at Eastern Hancock, and we're trying to figure out how to measure that. Success is also a fun one. We're only on year 4, so ultimate success doesn't happen until years after a kid leaves high school yet.
Right.
So if I ever wanted to be held accountable for something, it's that I want to be held accountable for how are our kids doing after they leave. And then I
Hmm.
want to hear from them about did your experience in your K-12 world help with that? Um, the other two, joy and connection, are the ones that, are sometimes best measured through a survey. We were just selected as Indiana's by our Indiana Chamber as one of the state's best places to work. We were the only
I love
school that
that.
made the list this year. So that felt like a good measure. But
Ah,
just to be honest, we struggle to figure out how do we measure those things, and then also like we want to measure by surveys from time to time, but I worry often about Campbell's Law that we're going to be so concerned about the results of the survey that we corrupt the system to get the results we're looking for instead of doing the things that we're looking to do. So in a lot of ways, we're starting to think about how do we measure the inputs more than we're measuring the results. And, if I can start to think about how many joy-filled moments am I adding to a kid's school week, then that's something that we can measure and think about over time. But
I
yeah,
think, and I think that's right. And when we think about measurement, and even just like your demeanor shifting around, like, oh, how do we measure it? And does it fit in a box, right? Like, I would love to see us think about continue to expand joy. Do I go and talk to kids? Do they feel joyous, right? Like, how many people are coming to our event? How many more people are adding these events to their classrooms and days because it's growing in our community?
yeah, that's
Surveys, like you said, like we don't want to, over survey people, but I just like your connections with kids. To me, that's a success. That's a metric. I talk to every kid, every junior and senior this year. I can imagine a world where you follow up with those kids and find out your spreadsheet continues to grow and you find out what th're doing as a result of their experience in Eastern Hancock.
we're finding that our best forms of measure aren't necessarily things we can put on a chart or
Hmm.
send to the state or be held accountable for in the traditional accountability ways, but our best measurement that we have a meeting every month with, we call it our student advisory council, and it's a group of high school kids. um, in the first year it took the month of August, which is when we start school in Indiana, to convince those kids that they could tell us the truth. And it's a little bit of that every August, but we have some kids that have stayed on that committee year to year, and then we spend the rest of the year just kind of buckling up and holding on tight while they tell us the truth about their school experience. And that's that is my most valued measure for what we're doing, and are we
Right.
living up to those promises?
And like you said, if they tell you the truth, you hear some hard things, and I'm imagining making some shifts based on what you're hearing.
That's right. Yep, for sure.
So that's part of it too, is like we have to really think about what counts. If we're expanding our definition of success and really looking at more broadly about what we want our K-12 experience to be for young people and the people who serve them, then we have to expand what counts. Conversations count, right? Observations, these convenings, they count as metrics towards like, are we really living up to these promises? And yes, standardized test scores and all those things aren't going to go away, but if we can put them in context with all the other things that matter, we don't want to not grow kids. We don't, of course, we want kids to be reading and writing as a foundational piece, but it's, much more than that. And they need all of those things to be successful.
This is something I think about a lot because it, if I didn't want to be held accountable to them, I'd have called them priorities or pillars or something different. But we
Hmm.
literally call them promises. And if I promise you something, Katie, then I want you to hold me accountable to it.
Right.
And at the same time, we want to be really careful that we don't deviate from the reason we put those promises in place in the first
Hmm.
place, which have very little to do with anything that we could standardize, because we know that we don't have any standard kids in our
Right.
district. They each have their own unique things about them. And it's really, I think some of the most important things that we do in our work are those things where we feel like we're in that tug of war, and trying to figure out how do you walk that tightrope of two things that seem opposite of each other.
Right. As you're saying that, one of my favorite examples of doing this and not grading it, not giving it a, you get a 2.5 out of 4 on this, but systems in Kentucky, some districts, they're really creating these defensive learning, celebration of learning, where young people are really showing evidence of their promises, of their profile of what success means in their system. But those are some of the biggest moments where teachers and families start to see, oh my gosh, my child is exhibiting joy, they're growing in these ways, they're able to talk about their strengths and interests and goals. I think that's a huge success when young people in our systems can talk about who they are because of the connections they've made, because of what they're learning, and then they can forecast for where they want to go.
And
I
measures
mean,
measures like that are also so important. They're hard to put in a grade book, right?
sure.
They're so important because it gives every kid a chance to show just how brilliant they are in
Hmm.
those unique, non-standardized ways.
Right.
And if we, we said from the beginning that we want to create a space where every kid wakes up excited to go to school, and if we can create a space where every kid feels like they're going to be looked at as someone who has a unique brilliance, then that's the kind of space that I would look forward to going to. Um,
For
and
sure.
yeah, so I love those kind of authentic performance tasks kind of measures.
Yeah. And then I've heard teachers say, oh my gosh, I thought I knew this kid. And then when, 5 minutes they stood up and talked about who they are and how they're growing, I have such a different perspective of this young person. Now I want to do more of this too. And it's just really, it's such a cool process for teachers to be able to see what kids are learning, but also for young people to be able to show who they are in different ways that you said doesn't quite fit in a grade book, doesn't quite fit in that standardized test because they aren't standardized and they can show a little bit more of who they are. All right. I've one more question I want to get to, and this is a little bit of a tricky one too. You clearly are leading the way, not just in Indiana, nationally, in the work that you're doing. And you haven't done this by just managing the status quo, right? You've talked about wanting to really create a school experience and atmosphere that's different. Um, how, what are some of your biggest tips or strategies for managing that change? Granted, you have a smaller system, like you said, you're all on one building, but you've talked a little bit about your student advisory, you've talked about your community partnerships, but how do you think about the process of managing change in your position?
Yeah, Katie, I know you are in a position where you get to visit a lot of schools,
Yep.
and you visit schools, the things that you see aren't always the most important things. Like when people come to visit Eastern Hancock, they always want to hear about our bell schedule. They always want to hear about those structural kinds of things that are, that's the easy part,
Hmm.
and we talk about the difference between transformational and transactional change. Sometimes I need to change the bell schedule because the kids need 5 more minutes to eat. And that's okay. But those transactional changes, what tools are we using? What are the structural things that are in place aren't really where the magic happens. The magic happens on in the day-to-day practices, and what are the teachers doing every day and what are the kids doing every day. And so we think really hard about, what are those things? Like, what does it look like for um, good teaching to happen and good learning to happen? And then we try to figure out how do we create a safe space for that. And then we talk about what are the foundational beliefs that have to be in place before someone's willing to change their behavior. And I believe from a leadership perspective, my primary job is to shift and align the beliefs within the district. That I can convince somebody to do something different tomorrow, but if I help them believe something different, I can change the way that they do that for the rest of their career. And so we start with aligning our beliefs. And for us, like we ground all of our work in those four promises. So is the stuff that we're doing in our classes going to result in higher levels of joy, connection, growth, and success? And if that's the case, then we're going to double down on it and we're going to continue to do it. We talk also a lot about the idea of valuing the work that's already being done.
Mhm.
And so when we think about change, we use this chart. If I could show you a picture, I would, but where we talk about the thing that we're trying to figure out how to do, and we start by thinking about what are the things that we're already doing that align to this that we want to keep or we want to double down on? And are there people in this building somewhere that are already serving as examples of the thing that we want to see spread throughout everywhere? So instead of thinking about the new thing that we might want to add for everybody, what's the thing that's already happening that we just really want to double down on? And then second, what's something that we might be doing that doesn't align that we just need to stop?
Mhm.
And then after that, we think about, are there new things that would make this better that we probably should think about adding? And while we're thinking about that, we always have a fourth column that we think about that is our column of what if we were really brave? Like what if, like we call that our wow. Like what if we were really brave enough to do whatever we thought was possible and didn't play by the rules? And so we think about it through four stages of change. So it's, what are we going to keep doing? What are we going to stop doing? What might we want to start? And then what might be those wow things that we would be, implementing that people might think we were crazy?
I just wrote that down. I love adding the wow, that like stretch, because you get in that habit of like, I love a good keep, stop, start, right? It's a great, way to think about it, but the wow takes it to that next level. And I think people skip the first one around the keep. And what you said is so important, really valuing the work that people are doing, what's already working, right? I love to go on my bright spot walks and really highlight this is our goal. Clarity first. You have a clear vision. You know where you're going. You know what your promises are. And then how does that align to what we're already doing? So people feel like, oh, this isn't something I have to throw it all out. Um, that's really, really powerful. And then being able to say, okay, what are some things we can stop doing? To your point, people have really full plates. We can't just keep adding more and more and more. So I appreciate that. And like you said, when people come and visit, they see the wow factor. They like, I want to take the structure away. But those processes of managing change will ensure that things work or do not if you don't have that process in place. So thank you for peeling back the curtains a little bit and sharing that process with us. I want to finish off with some rapid fire questions. I didn't prepare you for this. So you ready?
Sure.
All right. What's one thing we should, speaking of a keep, stop, start, what's one thing we should stop doing in education?
Oh, I think teacher evaluation. So like not teacher evaluation at all, but the traditional way of teacher evaluation, where an administrator goes into a classroom, sits as judge and jury, and rates the performance that's happening in front of them. My experience has been when we talk to teachers about, does this make you feel better? The answer is always no. And when we talk about administrators, do you enjoy this process? The answer is always no. So our first big domino that allowed, in addition to talking to the juniors and seniors, to allowing other change to happen was redoing our teacher evaluation. So we do not do that. And I truly believe that if we're going to create a space where kids are excited to be, we've got to create a space where teachers are excited to be first. And that has to happen. Um, you know, Part of that has to allow teachers to be evaluated in a safe space. That
Oh,
was not
yes.
rapid. I'm so sorry.
It is not rapid, but doesn't matter because I was like writing down notes because I definitely have lots of, I think you're absolutely right. Teacher evaluation has to mirror how we want to evaluate and assess our learners. And the judge and jury is not something that works for everybody. All right, what's one thing we should start doing?
Uh, Listening to our kids and working really closely with our communities.
And what should we keep doing?
I think learning from each other and having conversations like this, I think there's incredible things happening all over the place. And if we can just, just do our own keep and figure out what are those things that are happening and cause those things to spread, it would be a pretty incredible space.
Agree. What's something that you're focusing on or learning right now in your role or just as a human?
Yeah, something I'm spending a lot of time thinking about is teaching such a like personal profession. And how do I balance the constant push to get better and better at delivering on those promises, which is a relentless, forever long pursuit, with the idea that I want all of my people to know that I love them just the way they are at the same time. Like, how do I balance both of those things is something I'm thinking about nonstop.
Well, we'll have to do another podcast on that because there's a lot to dig into there. What's one thing that many people might not know about you?
I bring my dog to school every day. So her name's Rosie. She hangs out in our guidance office most days and just kind of runs around the school and hangs out with teenagers all day long.
She's living her best life. That's great.
You know it. Yep.
Do you have a favorite quote or saying that guides you?
Yeah. So I like Maya Angelou. It's an oldie and a goodie. So, she says, I've learned that people will forget. Give me a minute. Um, as you said, you didn't prepare me. So
I didn't
most
prepare you.
people
It's
will
all
forget
good.
what you said. They'll forget what you did, but they will never forget the way that you made them feel.
Absolutely. Last two. What are you grateful for right now?
My family, my school board, my staff. Katie, I know I can be a lot to work with, and uh, and I just have the best team. That it's an incredible space, and that team extends to my home. While I'm a lot to work with, I'm probably even more to live with. So
I that resonates deeply with me, and I'm sure the people who work and live with me would agree. Last thing, what is your hope for the future of education?
yeah, I think full circle. We'll go all the way back to my LinkedIn profile. It's just that my vision for the world is that every kid's waking up excited to go to school.
Awesome. George, what a fun conversation. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your vision and being relentless about making sure that these things are happening for kids in your community, but also modeling what's possible for so many others.
Well, thank you, Katie. I've admired you and your work for such a long time.
Thank you.